What's the problem for you with this Dominion voting systems?
Well, there are so many problems, Mark. It would be hard to articulate all of them. Their system was specifically created and designed by Venezuelan money and interest to rig elections for Hugo Chavez and then for Maduro. It was exported internationally, understand, to rig an election in Argentina. And it has been used to rig this election for to make it appear the votes were for Mr. Biden when Donald Trump won overwhelmingly. And I'm in the process of collecting evidence through a fire hose to the point it feels like a tsunami now,
right,
of honest, patriotic people, American citizens who are coming forward to tell us exactly what was going on. And I just got word today that 100 Dominion employees have even taken any affiliation with Dominion off their LinkedIn accounts, and Dominion scrubbing names of people like crazy.
Right. And it started, it only came out because I think a county clerk happened to notice that 6,000 Trump votes had been transferred to Joe Biden, I believe, in Michigan. But presumably less alert. It also came out because some of my math experts, who I know very well, immediately identified the algorithm that was being run to change the vote. Right. So that any number of batches of votes were changed by the machine, which by its own manual, it tells people it can do that. It was changed to run 67% for Biden, and votes were injected in that number by the hundreds of thousands multiple times. The exact same number and ratio were injected like 3 times in Wisconsin and twice in Michigan, or vice versa, a couple of 20 minutes apart or something. It's absurd. And for people to say there's no evidence of fraud, or the people that want to cover up the fraud for whatever their personal interests are, we also have some evidence coming in that people who bought these Dominion systems for their states got special benefits on the side. Right. And I mean, the level and width of the corruption is what the American people have felt for a long time, but we're just now getting people to come forward because it's so bad, and they've realized that I'm here and I will fight for it until we get it out there. I was very interested by this business of the algorithm, because I hadn't realized till then. I'd heard of this company, but that in Canada they're just tabulators. In other words, they just run optical scanners that scan paper ballots. So if you have an argument about the result, like they did, I think it was Nova Scotia, New Brunswick a couple of years back, they've actually got the hardcore paper ballots and they go back and count them manually. But in America, it's completely different machines they're running, which are actually voting machines and not just these optical scanners. Is there, when you've been going on about Gina Haspel at the CIA, I mean, the deep state security guys who've certified that this is the cleanest election ever run in America, are they the guys who? They need to be fired. I don't know whose payroll they're on, but they need to be fired yesterday. Democrats Elizabeth Warren and Amy Klobuchar were complaining about this several years ago. Carolyn Maloney wrote a letter to people about it years ago. They're even scrubbing the articles they cited from the internet. We've gone to check on several links, and they're gone. This is very widespread, and I have no doubt at this point it involves the tech companies at Silicon Valley who are also trying to suppress our free speech on all of these issues to cover their own you-know-whats. Yep, absolutely.
I am livid about all of it. I am livid about the level of corruption. I'm livid that the FBI and the CIA haven't done anything about the complaints they've received, which just makes me want to know even more who's been paid what and who is responsible for all of this, and who's paid whom to buy their elections.
And as you say, the media and the CIA and everything say, give it up, there's nothing to see here. What do you think? I take it you agree that this case ultimately is going to wind up before those 9 guys on the Supreme Court. Do you think they're going to be as eager to just sweep it under the rug?
I don't think so, Mark. I think the evidence is going to be so overwhelming, and I would warn any state right now that thinks they're going to certify this election to rethink it very seriously, because what they're certifying is their own fraud and their own complicity in fraud. And I might even mount a class action suit later to sue them themselves for their participation in it. It's ridiculous. The legislatures in the states need to take control right now and reject the certifications of especially the swing states that were so heavily influenced by these hundreds of thousands of vote changes. And the Smart Tech manual tells you that they can do this. They can change any vote they want to change. They can reallocate your ID from one vote to another. They can take batches of votes and trash them. If they were for Trump, they can add votes for Biden. They can be manipulated any way they want to be manipulated, and they had VPN connections and access. And I think Raheem Kassan actually tweeted a message yesterday, or a picture yesterday, of Glenn Simpson looking behind a string of Dominion voting machines.
Yeah, you said, if I understood you correctly, that they can actually program the percentages of, as it were. They can actually override whatever votes are in the machine and adjust them up and down until they reach the. Why would that be a feature of a voting machine?
Because it was created to do that to begin with. That's how Hugo Chavez and Maduro have ensured they won every Venezuelan election. So
somehow a Canadian company wound up putting Venezuelan counting machines in 33 American states. That's the upshot of that, Sidney.
Yeah, it was all created in Venezuela and designed to do this very thing, and they've installed Venezuelan machines. And then the votes actually go to Barcelona, Spain, and Frankfurt, Germany, where they can be further manipulated before they're sent back to be reported on AP and the New York Times and all that. The reason it was caught this big this time was because Donald Trump's lead was so overwhelming. They didn't calculate the algorithm high enough, and that's why they had to stop counting in those states.
Just a minute there, Sidney. I had no idea about that. These votes are actually counted they travel halfway around the world to Barcelona before they're counted. I want to come back with you. Hang on, please, Sidney. I want to come back and talk about that some more because that's extremely important. Mark Stein for Rush. More with Sidney Powell straight ahead. With us, the fearless attorney for both Michael Flynn and the president in his legal challenges, Sidney Powell. And as Sidney mentioned, they're talking about some class action suits to prevent the states prematurely certifying the election. And if you have some evidence of electoral fraud, you can go to Sydney's website, defendingtherepublic.org. It's well named, defendingtherepublic.org. Because Sidney will be defending it when most everybody else has fled. If you have evidence of electoral fraud, particularly in these critical swing states, then do go to that website. Sidney, you said something incredible to me, because as odd as it is that these foreign-made machines, Canadian machines with Venezuelan algorithms, are now in 33.
You might as well call them Venezuelan machines because that's essentially what they are.
Okay, that's
through a number of different companies to do this. And yes, we have Venezuelan communists influenced by Cuban communists counting our votes and deciding how our election's going to come out. It's an absolute outrage. It should be being investigated by the highest of our intel investigators, preferably military, because it's a national security threat. And that's exactly why they've done this. And and don't forget China's influence in all of it, too. There's Chinese parts in it and Chinese money and graft in Venezuela.
But you mentioned that it actually goes across the Atlantic to Barcelona, and I think you said somewhere else, before Frankfurt. So in other words, we've got the Germans and the Spaniards counting American votes too, which would be odd enough if you didn't already have the Canadians, the Venezuela. I mean, there's everybody but Americans involved. Well, the Spaniard part is actually those parts are actually controlled by the Venezuelans too. The counting centers over there are controlled by the Venezuelan money. But what is you're a lawyer, and you know that in any law, even in any the most trivial lawsuit, chain of custody of the evidence is the most important thing. You know, that a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy of what might have been an original document 37 versions earlier is less persuasive as evidence than the real thing. So why do we have like a complete contempt of chain of custody here, where these votes are sent actually into foreign jurisdictions before they eventually return as hard numbers?
Right, and there are multiple means of how they alter it. They alter it to begin with by running the algorithm where they want to run it, but they can also alter it by trashing votes, adding votes, and then if they don't like it still then, they can change it again in Barcelona. Right.
So in other words, whatever shenanigans, to use the euphemism people seem to prefer, whatever shenanigans take place in a precinct in Michigan, if that's insufficient, they can change it yet again while the so-called vote is out of the country.
Right.
How?
The hand count in Georgia that they're pretending to do now, they're going to try to use that to promote the argument that the Dominion fraud software stuff is a hoax. That's baloney. They did all kinds of different things there that include kind of closing out Republican accounts and doing provisional ballots for people that then disappeared. And we've got to have access to the machines themselves to get the software and examine it. But we know there were, quote, glitches in Georgia, too. Right. And anytime there was a glitch like that, there was software probably uploaded that changed things. They can change it over the Internet. It should never have had an Internet connection. Patches were put in like the day before the election, and they were never certified. The machines aren't supposed to be touched for ages before the election. That's a violation of law by itself. I mean, but we also have, at least I've been told, that there are special concerns about the governor of Georgia and the Secretary of State having received some kind of personal benefit for rushing the purchase of the Dominion machines into the state.
You said something else interesting there, that they actually were connected to the Internet. Because last time round, we were told, when there was all this stuff about the Russian collusion and all the rest of it, that voting machines are safe because voting machines are not online. They're machines, but they're not, but some guy sitting in Macedonia or St. Petersburg can't actually hack into it because it's not connected to the Internet. You're saying that this time round there were machines connected to the Internet.
These machines are so hackable a 15-year-old could do it.
And does that mean that in the lawsuit you're asking a judge to actually let some kind of tech experts into the machines themselves to figure out what's been programmed there and what's going on in them?
That is definitely one of the things we need. I can't even tell you at this point whether it's in any of the existing lawsuits, but I've certainly encouraged people to put them in the ones that they filed.
And do you think, you said you thought it was definitely going to the Supreme Court. Everyone seems to think that John Roberts, the Chief Justice, has no appetite for this, and his whole thing is always to, as it were, diminish the significance to prevent the Supreme Court doing anything like overturning and being perceived to have overturned an election or whatever. Do you think, I mean, these seem to me to raise absolutely extraordinary issues where essentially foreign actors, we've been told for 4 years about foreign interference in American elections, and it turns out the entire U.S. election is one great act of multi-foreigner interference. Is that big enough for him to, in a sense, not be able to turn down the case?
If that isn't big enough for him to take the case, he should be impeached.
That's there'd be a lot of people who'd support you on that. Thank you. You always you have that thing that really good lawyers have, which is a slight degree of inscrutability, Sidney, when you're being interviewed. Let me just ask you as a final question: do you feel optimistic that the truth is going to get out about this thing?
I feel very optimistic the truth is going to be, it will get out. Of course, everybody on the face of the earth now is trying to suppress it. including people in our own government. But I won't quit until it's out and, release the Kraken.